Hello, everyone. The episode you are about to hear, I made a slight error. I have upgraded my audio equipment, but I mistakenly did not switch it to the new audio when I recorded. So, the audio of this episode that you will hear is through my headphones microphone. I forgot to switch the sound to my new boom mic. So, that's the clarification. Because at the top of the episode, I say, and you're listening to me with new sound equipment. Well, turns out I hadn't done that. So, hopefully the audio is good. I was hoping it would be better using my new mic. But I promise that tomorrow's episode will be recorded using the new technology. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Enjoy. Hello there, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Only What You Take With You, my Tuesday show. Presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. I have upgraded my audio system, so I'm hoping that I sound more clear on this new microphone. I wanted to talk a little bit today about Han Solo and what I'd like to call the mask of Han Solo. Before we do that, I just want to make mention that this is Tuesday on which I'm recording this, and Tuesday on which this episode will be posted. Tonight is the penultimate episode of The Acolyte. Next week is the last episode of The Acolyte for this season. I've heard that there will be more than one season. If all goes well, of course. I'm very excited tonight because I think we're going to learn some things that I certainly have been itching to know. So I'm very excited about that. My review will be out tomorrow. I have no predictions. None. Or at least nothing I'm willing to bet on. I don't want to, to use the incorrect phrase, bet the farm on anything on the show. Because time and again, it has thrown a curveball at me. And I'll tell you what, I love that. I love it that I don't know. I love it. So that'll be tonight. Should be interesting. I can't wait to review it for tomorrow. So for today, let's talk about our guy, Corellia's favorite son, Han Solo. Han Solo is certainly one of the most beloved characters in Star Wars. Thanks in large part to Harrison Ford. I won't go into the details, but he really had no design of being an actor in Star Wars. But it just so happened that it all worked out that way. Han Solo, as a character, is a classic archetype. the pirate, the swashbuckler, the cowboy outlaw. These are kind of characters that we've seen in literature, movies, and so forth for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And Han Solo fits that archetype. But the reason I wanted to call this the Mask of Han Solo is because how much of Han Solo is the real Han Solo? Han Solo is primarily remembered for being a brash, devil-may-care, jaded, forgive the word badass. That is what he is primarily remembered for. But I believe that that is an act. That is a mask that he puts on. That the real Han Solo is not. The real Han Solo is more caring, more loving, more compassionate than he wants people to know. I need to give credit to my friend Eldon Diaz. Because, well, Eldon is great and a genius when it comes to Star Wars ideas. And he's the one who, the real impetus for this episode is because I was thinking about what Alden had said a few years ago. That Han Solo is often a misunderstood character because people remember the badassery, but maybe don't remember the other side of him. As well. Maybe don't remember that as well. Because Han Solo is not who he presents himself as. He is masking, he is presenting a false front of creating this persona of this devil-may-care rogue and scoundrel that I think underneath he isn't. It is something he puts on, I think it's his way of dealing with the world. And maybe it's his coping mechanism for living under the boot of the Empire. Or masking his own insecurities. There are some scenes in the Star Wars original trilogy, the sequel trilogy, and in Solo, a Star Wars story, where we do get to see the real Han Solo. In A New Hope, we don't really get much of a glimpse of him. Until the end, when he decides to come back and help his friends. And truly, I think he lets his guard down when they're celebrating after their return to the Yavin base. Because he's actually happy, genuinely. He's not putting on a cynical front when he greets Luke after the victory over the Death Star. He's being genuine in that moment. And Leia says an important line about Han. She says, I knew there was more to you than money. This is kind of the first glimpse of the real Han Solo. He cares a lot more than he cares to admit. The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, yes, we see a lot of Han bristling at Leia and having their grunty banter back and forth. There's a wonderful scene where they're in Cloud City. Leia is in their apartment in Cloud City. She's worried about C-3PO because he's disappeared. But Han comes in and they have this really sweet conversation. But I think there is no pretense in Han. He is being genuine. But Leia's worried that once Han gets the money to, so he can pay off Jabba the Hutt, that he's gone from her life forever. It's a sweet moment. It's a romantic moment where I think Han displays his genuine personality. The scene when Han and Leia first kiss on the Millennium Falcon, Han is still putting up his scoundrel mask, though he does say an interesting line. Leia's like, I like nice men. And he says, I'm a nice man. But overall, that scene is definitely Han still being the Han Solo persona. But the scene on Cloud City where he's talking to Leia, that's a genuine moment. And then later when he gets frozen in carbonite, even though the line, Leia says, I love you, and he says, I know. Even though that's a funny line, I think it's genuine. And that's genuinely how he feels. That's a genuine moment. And then in Return of the Jedi, we get a lot of Han's bravado. There is one moment where we really see the genuine Han Solo. After the Death Star blows up, he says to Leia, I hope Luke wasn't on that thing when it blew. And she says, he wasn't. I can feel it. And Han's like, you love him. And she's like, yes. And he's like, and I think he's being genuine in this moment, saying, when Luke comes back, I won't get in the way. I think he's being genuine. Or at least as genuine as Han Solo is capable of being. And then Leia says, it's not like that. He's my brother. Anyhow, but the moment there is a sincerity for Han Solo in that moment. And I think that these are examples in the original trilogy of where the mask of Han Solo is dropped. And we see the real him. Another bit in Return of the Jedi is when Luke tells Leia that he has to go and confront Vader. This is also where she kind of first learns she's his sister. Han Solo comes out and says, hey, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing's wrong. And he's like, come on. She's like, I can't tell you. And then Han, in a very typical Han moment, well, you could tell Luke, is that who you could tell? And then he throws up his arms and goes, eh. And then he pauses and he turns around and says, I'm sorry. In a very sweet, sincere way. And Leia says, hold me. Yet again, the mask drops for a moment. I think that jumping ahead to the sequel trilogy, The Force Awakens might be the greatest example of Han Solo dropping his mask. Han is sent to confront his son. Now, Han pulls a lot of his usual bravado. But when Rey asks Han, "You knew Luke Skywalker," we get a genuine moment from Han Solo, I think. He says, "Yeah, I knew him. The Jedi were real." And he's like, "I used to think it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo." And then he has a sincere moment of kind of explaining how his views changed. And then later, when he makes it to Dakar, at the Resistance base, there are some wonderful moments between Han and Leia that are very genuine. When Han says to Leia about Ben Solo, I know that every time you look at me, it reminds you of him. And it's a very sweet moment where he's like, Luke couldn't get through to him. What makes you think I can? And Leia's like, you're his father. And that's a very sweet scene where we really see the real Han Solo. And then later, when Leia says goodbye to Han before the mission, if you see our son, bring him home. Which, just as to sidetrack, that came true. That wish came true in The Rise of Skywalker. And we'll get to that in a minute. That Han did bring Ben home. It's not the way anyone expected. I think Han knows there's a look in his eye that if he confronts his son, it could be his death. And he knows that. But because of the love he has for his son, he's willing to take the risk. So there, on Starkiller Base, he confronts his son. He calls him by his real name, not by Kylo Ren. In that moment, he's like, take off that mask, you don't need it. I think that's a moment that's not bravado, that's just a firm, son, you're lying to yourself about who you are. And he has that moment where he's like, come home. And then, whether he's being honest or not, says, I want to be free of the pain. Help me. And Han's like, I'll do anything. I mean, this is the pretense of Han Solo. The mask of Han Solo is completely dropped in this scene. What you have is a father and his love for his wayward son. And then, I think maybe one of the greatest Han Solo moments, Kylo Ren turns on his lightsaber and stabs his father. But what does Han do? He reaches out his hand and touches his son's cheek. Even in the moment of his death, he is expressing love for his son. And expressing that I love you no matter what you choose. Whether it be good or bad, I still love you. That is one of the greatest and most sincere Han Solo moments. And then, as I said, The Rise of Skywalker. This was a complete surprise to me. The image, the memory of Han Solo appearing In my headcanon, Leia used the Force to create this moment, and that's what caused her to die. Which I think is a beautiful thing if you think about it. What Leia was willing to give for Ben to have closure with his father. In an absolutely stunning moment, in my opinion. One of the greatest Star Wars moments there is. It's a repeat of the scene from The Force Awakens. Some of the lines are different, but the general idea is the same. Only this time, Ben makes the right choice. A friend of mine, Just Bauer, pointed out the similarity to this moment in Jesus and St. Peter. After Jesus' resurrection, he was sitting with Peter eating dinner, eating fish. And he says, Simon Peter, lovest thou me more than these? Basically saying, do you love me more than the meal we just had? And Peter's like, yeah. And then Jesus says it 3 times. Peter's like, Lord, you know I love you. Now, Just Bauer pointed out that Peter had also denied Jesus 3 times around the time of Jesus' crucifixion. He denied that he knew Jesus. People are like, well, you were with Jesus. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. This, where Jesus said, lovest thou me more than these? Do you love me? Was a chance for Peter to redo his earlier mistake, and this time do it right. That's exactly what's going on here. Kylo Ren made the wrong choice in The Force Awakens. But in The Rise of Skywalker, he makes the right choice. And yet again, there is no pretense with Han Solo. There is no mask. There is no bravado. It's a father's love for his son. Ben can't bring himself to say, I love you, Dad. But as Han likes to do, he says, I know. He says, I know you love me. I understand. This is Han Solo unmasked. This is the real compassionate, loving, caring Han Solo that he often spends his life trying to hide. These moments with his son, all that pretense is gone. It's an absolutely beautiful thing about his character. When we get to see the cracks in the mask, which, oddly enough, masks are a big deal in Star Wars and are a very important theme. So, as we close, I just want to talk real quick about Solo, a Star Wars story. I think Alden Ehrenreich makes an excellent young Han. Is he different than the Han that we know? Yes. And I think the reason is our young Han Solo is plucky and adventurous and more on the optimistic side about things. He does get beat down pretty hard a few times. But I think it's in Solo that he decides, I'm going to be an awesome devil-may-care outlaw. Hera just rolls her eyes at that. Because she's like, you're a good person. You really are. You're one of the good guys. And Han's like, yeah, right. So he starts to put on this mask. Now, he's certainly more positive about things in Solo, but the next 10 years, he's going to become more jaded. Or at least add jaded to his persona. Whether or not he really is jaded, I don't know. But I do think that he spends the next 10 years building up that jaded persona. When in reality, that's not him. And I think Kira talking to him in the tent on Satharine, saying, "You're one of the good guys." She's like, "I might be the only person in the galaxy who knows who you really are." So yet again, Han Solo and the Mask of Han Solo. And I think Alden Ehrenreich nails it, even though the character is different. This is 10 years, and the stuff that's going to happen to him in the next 10 years is probably going to bring us to where we meet him in A New Hope. And Solo, a Star Wars story, I think shows us more of the real Han Solo than any of the other movies. But it makes sense because he starts to put on that mask throughout Solo, and we see where that leads. So those are my thoughts on the Mask of Han Solo. Deep underneath, he is compassionate, caring, insecure, but the mask he creates is not the real Han Solo. And it's these reasons of the mask of Han Solo and the real Han Solo, when you add all these things up, it creates one of the most beloved and iconic characters in all of cinema. So those are my thoughts on the Mask of Han Solo. Let me know what you think. My name is Brendan Marr at Noisy Earrings My Ventilator. Thank you for tuning in to Only What You Take With You, my Tuesday show presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe and follow me on my various social platforms. You can find me on X at Brennan Mystical, BRENNEN, MYSTICAL. And join me tomorrow for my review of The Acolyte, episode 7. And you can find me on Instagram and Threads at Brennan Blue. Thank you for listening. May the Force be with you.